How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Tuesday, April the 2nd. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, and David Williams. He's produced the program. If you're in the St. John's Metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So this is something I meant to mention yesterday morning. I want to congratulate Team Newfoundland and Labrador participating last week in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan in the Canadian Wheelchair Curling Championships. Made it to the final play against Saskatchewan. They needed 3 in the 10th to send it to an extra. They got their 3, but Saskatchewan scores 1 in the extra to win, but we come home with a silver medal. So congratulations to the skipper, Doug Dean, the third, Felix Green, the second, Katie Hubbard, the lead, Cecilia Carroll, and the coach, Gary Ryan. Of course, you just heard Brian Medora mention Team Guju as Team Canada at the Worlds over in Switzerland. So they won this morning, beat New Zealand 7-4, but lost yesterday to the number 1 team in the world, Italy, 7-6. Weren't necessarily their sharpest yesterday, but that win this morning against New Zealand makes 50 victories for Brad Gushue, Mark Nichols, and Jeff Walker at the World Championships. Go get them. They play the States later today. The States are 3-2, but they had a big win early too. They beat the Swiss in their first game, so they're dangerous. For folks who are wondering what's going to be the fate and the future for the Newfoundland Growlers and the Trois-Rivières-Lyon, now we know that the Growlers leadership are working with the league to try to come up with a solution. But as of today, the fate of these two teams belongs in the hands of the league. So the Board of Governors set an April 2nd deadline to complete the sale for the season of both teams, or the season could be cut short. So they've actually put a mechanism in place that if the sale isn't finalized, all the players become unrestricted free agents. Those players will still be paid their full season salary. The good news is that they're working on it, and we'll see what today and tomorrow brings, but fingers crossed they endure for the rest of the year. A couple of random notes in the hockey world. So it was on this date in 1980, in the first full season in the NHL, his first full season, the great one, Wayne Gretzky scores for Edmonton in 1-1 tie with Minnesota to become the youngest player to reach 50 goals at 19 years of age, 19 years, 2 months. And of course, Leafs fans in particular keeping an eye on Austin Matthews, who was an absolute beast as a goal scorer with his 62nd last night. Outside chance of hitting that 70 mark, but that 60 makes him only one of 7 players to ever record multiple 60-goal seasons. There you go. And here's a record that still stands today. In 1986, Paul Coffey, the Edmonton Oilers, scored his 47th and 48th goals of the season in an 8-4 win over the Canucks to break Bobby Orr's NHL record for most goals by a defenseman. That record still stands today. On the list, the only 2 active players inside the top 25, Brent Burns, he's 18th on the list with 29 goals. Cale Makar, he's 25th on the list with 28 goals a couple of years ago. All right, this is an interesting story. And, you know, we see far too often pictures of trucks jackknifed or tipped over while trying to traverse the wreck house. I mean, notoriously windy part of the province where winds can exceed 150 kilometers per hour. Now, there are warning boards as you enter into the wreck house area that the wind funnels through the hills. And, of course, if you've ever driven through there, it's white-knuckle stuff. So as much as there are warning signs in place, you know, giving you up-to-date Environment Canada information about wind speeds and gusts and the like, the fact of the matter is it's not enforced. So there are suggestions by a couple of retired truck drivers and a couple of current active truck drivers thinking that maybe, just maybe, if the conditions are really as dangerous as they are so often in the wreck house, the road should be closed to commercial traffic. Not a bad idea. Now, truckers will tell you that time is of the essence. They need to get their product wherever wherever it's intended to be delivered and get back on the road. So yeah, the time crunch is real, but the possibility for it to be a really dangerous situation for the public is also very real, whether it be a jackknife or a truck that rolls over or gets blown over. So if you're someone that drives through the wreck house and has been as nervous as people would be when they're trying to drive behind a transport truck or see a transport truck coming towards them, and the possibility for the wind to topple the transport truck. But this gentleman says it's one thing to warn us, another thing to close the road. In many parts of the country, some notorious stretches of highway, when it presents an obvious danger, they close them without hesitation. You know, it comes to mind the Icefields Parkway in Jasper or Banff National Park. If that presents a real dangerous opportunity for public safety, bang, they close it. And no questions asked. They don't worry about commercial traffic and or individuals, but interesting suggestion. And you look out around Cape St. George and the cleanup continues, and then a landslide on Riverside Drive in Cornerbrook that caught a couple of cars out. Then I heard a story, a really incredible story about a woman living in a house in Lark Harbour, and there's significant rainfall. She was in the living room watching TV, and then lo and behold, bang, here comes a landslide. Then a second, bang, here comes more landslide, and consequently the house was knocked right off of the foundation. Some of the links between these events is that so many people did not have insurance. So awful condition for those three areas, but be patient and stay away, no looky-loos. All right, in the world of power. So we found out let's see here, it was on February the 10th that it was discovered that 8 towers on the Labrador Island Link had been damaged. They called the damage minor. You know, there was no interruption to transmission. Some of the communications cables had been compromised. So between identifying the damage and actually getting in, they talked about it taking a full month for repairs to be completed on those 8 towers. Now, unconfirmed reports of more damaged towers. We actually currently have notes into Newfoundland Labrador Hydro to get some information about if there is damage, how many towers, what's timelines for issues, has it affected transmission? Because we know, and we were told quite clearly, given the isolated, remote, long-range mountains towers, that Liberty Consulting told the PUB if there's significant damage, it could take 45 days for power to be fully restored if the power is cut off because of said damage in these rural, remote parts of the Labrador Island Link. So that's an obvious concern, and we're happy to try to get some updated information from Hydro as soon as possible. And of course, you want to talk anything Hydro, let's go. So yesterday, what seems to be a wave of pre-budget announcements on the federal front. We know the federal budget comes down on April the 16th. And we've heard a variety of things like the National Renters Program, and there's some ups and downs to it. We can get into it. But the announcement yesterday was about establishing a national school lunch program, hoping to deliver meals to an additional 400,000 children. I think we can all get behind feeding children in school. And the issue is $1 billion over 5 years. Now, important to note that $1 billion over 5 years was also promised by the federal Liberals in 2021. And they reiterated the promise yesterday. They say they hope to have it in place by the 24-25 school year. All right. Like everything else, the dental care program, the pharma care program, the rental program, and this school lunch program, not really enough in the way of details. Look, we all know what it means for the ability to learn and stability in school and mental health concerns, and yes, children living in poverty where the one place they might get a decent meal is at school, whether it be through Kids Eat Smart and the breakfast program and or the school lunch program. How does it work with programs that are, of course, piecemeal and scattered across the country, underfunded? So this is probably overall a good thing. But let's just think it through to some schools that are simply not equipped to deliver a hot lunch. Where my children went to grade school, there's no kitchen. So how does a hot lunch lunch program work in schools like that? Again, I think we can get behind trying to feed children in school, but there's still some of those devil in the details issues that remain on some of these big swings taken by the federal government in the recent past. So it was a promise back in 2021, and it's reiterated yesterday. Important to note, Canada is the only country in the G7 that does not have a national school lunch program. So we've got all this network of, charitable programs and the School Lunch Association here in this province that are underfunded, I would suggest. But if you want to take it on, we can do it. And inside the schools, there's been so many headlines and so much important information shared regarding whether it be violence and these declining scores in some important core areas of education. So wherever you want to talk about education, you know me, I'm completely up for it because it remains on the front burner for me. talking about early days in education. And the federal government very recently, once again, talked about expanding the $10 a day daycare offering. So they're saying they're trying to expand towards 250,000 new spaces by March of 2026. In this province, expansion has happened, but of course we only get the top line numbers, whether it be the number of early childhood educators and or daycare spaces. We never really get the numbers about how many we've lost, so we can understand the net gain. Anyway, the Federation of Labour has surveyed some 520 early childhood educators in this province regarding their want to stay on the job. 42% of the province's ECEs are considering finding a new job because of lack of benefits and low wages. Now, we'll get to what the province has introduced for a stabilised pay grid for early childhood educators, but digging in a little further. 57% of the respondents said they don't receive health or dental benefits through their work. 80% don't have a pension, and 90% don't know when they'll be able to retire. So the thought is, if you're working in such a critically important role, how come they're not on the provincial pension plan? That's a big question. Now, again, the province has said that they have addressed some of these concerns, but if you look at the reality, it's taking months, if not years, on a wait list to secure a spot in a $10 daycare spot. 80% of young children in this province, and the second most in Canada, live in what they call a childcare desert. All right. The province has 8,800 childcare spaces operating at $10 a day or less. 1,300 of those created since January of 2023. What is the net gain? Don't know. In budget 2024, the continuation of the ECE wage grid. A $5,193 bonus for childcare administrators. $5,178 Labrador allowance for ECEs and administrators. $5,178 bonus for certified Francophone ECEs. Go on to talk about more money for, say, signing bonuses. Early childhood educators can receive a $2,500 upon certification and recertification up to a maximum of $7,500. When we put, and see, daycare is something that some people just consider glorified babysitting, when it is bigger than that, and it's more important than that. So to get it right there, because we need thousands more early childhood educators just to keep up with the demand of today, not in the future, and additional demand for spaces. So pretty bleak looking outcome for that particular survey conducted by the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labour. All right, let's get into it. Let's move off to the fishery. So, Minister Elvis Lovelace has indeed written a letter to the FFAW. I heard John Efford on with Jerry Lynn Mackey earlier this morning on the VOC Morning Show, and Mr. Efford, for all intents and purposes, became the face of the protest. So he was seemingly pleased with the letter that had been penned, sent to the FFAW, about outside buyers expanding processing capacity. And in fact, they did indeed expand processing capacity this year up to the tune of some £5 million. They removed some of the processing prohibitions, aka the caps. So some of those things are quite good. Now, they've also made some sort of point of saying that, people will be able to submit to purchase a buyer's license to buy and export all commercial species out of the province for the 2024 season. Problem is that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because I guess it's basically a deterrent. Because if I'm a processor and I can buy or apply for a buyer's license, get one, purchase the species and ship it out, I haven't put in any more work in my plant or work for my plant workers. So Mr. Efford, pretty pleased on that front. I think that was my takeaway from his conversation with Jerry Lynn. But don't look now. The price-setting panel, which of course is a flawed process to begin with, they have selected the price from the Association of Seafood Producers at $2.60 per pound. They're being offered upwards of 80 or 90 cents more across the Gulf. This is going to be a problem. The thought now is, even though DFO has delayed the start of the snow crab season, does that price chosen at $2.60 mean that we're going to see another tie-up this year? Remember, the province said they were willing to work with both groups to avoid a tie-up this season. Last season, 6-week tie-up. Really complicated matters. So at $2.60, I think we're going to see and hear an awful lot of frustrated fish harvesters, and whether or not that brings back the protests that were quelled with an 11th hour deal last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, we'll see what becomes of it. So happy seemingly on one hand with the negotiated concessions and or opening up what they call the free enterprise that had been lacking in the fishery, but the price per pound, don't think that's going to be very well received. All right, let's get at it. Carbon tax protests right across the country yesterday. There were some 15 locations that recorded a protest. It hasn't been a very fulsome conversation. And here's basically how they're leaning on Yves Giroux and the Parliamentary Budget Office comments and review of the carbon tax. On one hand, the Liberals lean on this component. They say that 8 out of 10 will receive more in a rebate than they actually pay in carbon tax. Okay. The Conservatives, they lean on the second part of the report. Mr. Giroux talking about the overall economic impact and that most will be worse off with the carbon tax included, pointing to some notable areas. Transportation, which is obviously a worry in this province, given just how much we import for goods and services and for food in particular. So he talks about transportation. He talks about employment numbers. He talks about the oil and gas sector. And this one's a bit odd, because inside that sector he talks about decreased profits and decreased dividends to the shareholders. I don't think that's the impact that is the concern of the majority of Canadians. But so which is it, right? Is this tool, or as Premier Fury calls it, this instrument, the most advantageous, cost-effective way to proceed with any mitigation against emissions, climate change? So this, once again, the Liberals lean on the good part, the Conservatives lean on the other part, and overall economic impact is extremely important to consider. It's also important to consider, and I get taken to task for this, but I don't care. If not the tax, what? You know, the comments coming consistently from the opposition is simply leaning on innovation and technology. Great. They've got to be part of the solution. Of course they do. And some of that's already been considered in federal pots of money, including tax subsidies. But what exactly are we talking about? If we're talking about inaction, it will come with a distinct cost. If we're talking about doing away with the tax and replacing with other policies and procedures and monies and subsidies, how does it work? What are we talking about specifically? Who's going to pay for it and how much? I don't think those are unfair questions, because the Conservative Party says they understand that climate change is real and needs to be addressed. The question is how and by what tool or instrument. Anyway, I want to talk about it. Let's stick with tax for a second. So people still every now and then bring up to me, what about what they refer to as the potential cash grab, which is the sugar tax. It's been met with pushback right from day one. There was confusion right off the bat about how the tax would be applied and who applies it and what it will be applied to. But there's still some problems with it. For instance, when you're making decisions about what you're going to buy and the sticker price does not reflect any additional cost and or tax, then you don't make an informed decision until it's too late. You've gone through the till and you see it detailed on the receipt. So that's one thing. Secondly, they forecasted $9 million in revenue. And as of last fall, the update was they'd collected some $11 million plus, which is 22% more than they thought they'd bring in. So I guess that's how you measure whether or not people have changed their tune, changed their behaviors. And as of now, and they say, well, it's going to take time. Well, how much time? So doesn't seem to be working the way it's intended. Again, I think we can all get behind healthier lifestyles, what that means for interaction with the healthcare system and the associated cost of that interaction. And the monies were intended to flow to, early on in the debate, they were going to talk about new programs that would be funded as opposed to programs already in place. And here's where the money is supposed to land. Glucose monitoring pilot program, which is important. Physical activity tax credit. It's only credit after the fact. Doesn't bring more low to middle income children into organized physical activity, but healthy living incentives such as the prenatal infant nutrition supplement, school breakfast and lunch programs, and support for recreation, physical activity, and athletic and sport development. But the sugar tax is on the tip of the fingertips of many people that email me on a regular basis, and we're happy to talk about it. All right, how are we doing on the phone there, David? Got a couple of quick ones we want to get to. So there are stories out there about MRI wait times. We know that Pattern Energy has now been given some land. Well, some land has been made available for their project up to 300 megawatts to advance. They weren't included in the first round of approvals or green lights like the other four companies because their initial phase one was not on Crown land. So they look like they're going to be able to move forward. It's only a week until we find out what the government thinks about the World Energy GH2 proposal, so we can talk about that. Lots of people, well, and it's World Autism Day as well. Important. Last one. So we can talk about the carbon tax. We can talk about all sorts of things that have been announced and things that are going away and things of concern. But what has not gotten much attention since maybe early on in February when I talked about this, but as of tomorrow, the two programs, Wellness Together and its companion app, Pocket Well, the funding dries up and it's going away. It was introduced during the pandemic and it had been extremely helpful for countless Canadians. I have put people onto Wellness Together many, many times, and people generally get back to me saying it had been quite helpful. 24/7 availability, talk about mental wellness, mental illness, and substance abuse. And the government seems to think that all those things have been figured out and solved, and they're taking away funding, which is not huge money, for Wellness Together. So tomorrow's the day that it goes away. There are patient therapists across the country that are healthcare professionals that actually use this organization, Wellness Together, themselves, refer patients to it, and it has proven to be an extremely important backstop in addition to other layers of mental health services in the country. How can that possibly be a good idea? The issues have not been settled. Canadians' mental health is worse than it ever has been. We used to say 1 in 5 dealing with mental illness. Now we use 1 in 4 that have concerns, whether it be a diagnosed formal mental illness and or struggles with their mental wellness. But tomorrow, Wellness Together goes away. Bad idea, in my personal opinion. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. We're going to kick it off with Ron talking about some issues on Fogo Island. Tom wants to talk about the carbon tax. Noreen, another update about the lack of phone service at Brookside. We had a chat about that yesterday. We'll hear from Noreen right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Ron, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hi there.
Hi. Paddy?
Yes, sir. You're on the air. Go right ahead.
Yes, this is Ron Close calling. I'm calling about the trout. They're running down from Holland Harbour to Deep Bay. The pond is called Fosco Pond. And they changed the road there a few years ago, and someone blasted through there. And what's happening now, there's 8 ponds up there. The trout is running down along by the side of the road, and they're just running out in a open spot like a dog, right? And the people there in Deep Bay and I've picked up quite a few trout on the side of the road did. Now, I went and gandered there Thursday. I was talking to Clifford Small's office there, and I've been calling, and I've done everything. I've called the fisheries and everything. Anyway, Clifford Small's office, Ryan I was talking to there, and I asked him would he come out on Fogo Island to talk to the people that's seeing all those trout dying. And he said no, and I said, why? Well, he said, I don't believe, he said, what's going on there because there's nobody calling. He said, and I said, well, people called, but I said, I don't think they knows you, or no more than I do. I said, I only just meet you. But he said to me, the big story is about this, sir, is, he said, I'm not going to waste no government money on Fogo Island. I said, not going to waste no government money. You know, I said, I'm not asking you to waste government money. I said, I'm asking you to come out and talk to the people and try to get this fixed because there's hundreds of thousands of trout running down by the road dying. Now, I was talking to Colin Art, the fish officer, before this, and he got area maps, pictures of it too, right? Because I called the environment and I called, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans in St. John's. They called me and said they're going to work on it. But anyway, this PC member, Ryan was his name, he looked up and said, well, we're not going to Fogo Island. He said, I'll waste no PC money on Fogo Island. So, you mean...
Interesting reaction.
There's a lot of trout running by the road, they're dying.
So, just for clarification, how many trout have we seen dead on the side of the road, and how did they end up on the side of the road?
Okay, I'll tell you what happened. When they upgraded the road, they blasted up through there, and the way the water had been running for thousands of years, there's 8 ponds up above down on the road, and it runs down into the pond we call Fosco Pond, and then they leave Fosco Pond and goes out to the salt water. So whoever upgraded the road, because what's happening there, they blast a trench, and the trench runs down along by the side of the road. Now, the fish officers calling Art know it all about it, but he made one call or something. So I've been at this now for the last 3 weeks, and I was talking to people that have picked up like 15 or 20 trout on the bog dead because, put it this way, there's no way that they can get the way they should go, right? Because the water is just running down along by the side of the road. So if you look at it this way, now there's 8 ponds up there. Just say there's 500 or 600 trout after running down there in the last couple of years, and each one of those trout, they carries anywhere between 5,000 to 6,000 spawns, the eggs. So if there's 400 or 500 run out there, and all this after dying. So we after losing, thousands and thousands of trout. This is a disaster to those ponds. My son was home there last Friday. Me and he went trouting up there. We've fished 4 or 5 ponds. I went up there Sunday. I couldn't get in our fish. And I was talking to a few people there, and he said, there's no good to go there. He said, those ponds are completely dead. There's no trout left there. Now, the last time I was fishing there with my son, he was 4-year-old. And that's where he caught his first trout, was in Fosco Pond. Then we went up on Holland there, Holland Road. And there's a place there that, a couple of friends of mine always fish there, and we caught 4 or 5 deer. And like I said, it's my first time in my life. My father, we used to go in there fishing, and Holland people fish there, and Deep Bay people fish there. It's the first time in my lifetime that we cannot catch a trout in those ponds, because I guess they after all coming out and dying by the road. And once he comes out, there's no way getting back, because there's no way that trout can swim up the highway. You know, they got to go up the center of the road to get back there, right? There's no way to get back.
Does anybody have any idea as to what's happening?
Yes, DFO knows, because Colin Nairn was supposed to call me. He called me last Friday. He was supposed to meet with me last week, but he ended up off of work sick. And then there was another fishery officer meet me on Monday, and they're supposed to meet with me, I say, some day of the week. Well, I went to the transportation there, the highways there, and they went up and took a look at it. And she said we would dam this off and let the water run the right way. But then the next day, our boss called her and told her, no, don't do this or don't do that. I guess whoever drawed up the plans for whoever done the contract, somebody made a big boo-boo. Right now, we got roughly 10 ponds there that we fished all of our life, and there's no trout left there. They're all just dead. So somebody's going to have to take responsibility, because in Nova Scotia, I just come home there in October. Up there, he goes around and he restocks the ponds in the spring. And I'm going to keep at this until those ponds is restocked with trout. Somebody got to take responsibility. I don't know who drawed up the plans for you or me down the highway, but somebody made a big boo-boo. It could be somebody in Montreal drawed up them plans. But the way the water been running since I was born, and my father, and put it this way, thousands and thousands of years. Now, the water runs down by the side of the road, and there's no way, once the trout comes out, they can't get back. So every one that drains out, we're losing every fish that we've been. There's a place that everyone from Holland and Deep Bay, and no doubt there's a lot of people around Fogo Island used to go fishing there, right?
Ron, before we get going, and if we're seeing this kind of mass die-off, then the people responsible for monitoring and coming up with solutions really do need to make their way to Fogo Island. That said, I'm hearing from the Clifford Smalls office, and they're saying that what you said was said by their staffers, whether it be Ryan or others, that what you said is being twisted. They didn't say they weren't willing to spend any money, PC money, to go to Fogo Island. So can you give me the exact exchange?
Well, that's what he said to me. He said, we're not going to spend no money on Fogo Island. Not going to waste no money. So he was sat in the chair with his leg cocked up over his leg cocked up and his hands folded. I said to him, buddy, I said, you're wasting government money right now. He said, what do you mean? I said, you're sat on your ass doing nothing. I said, that's what I call a waste of money. I said. And since that, I come home. I've been talking to a couple of people in Deep Bay here, and they said, well, the PC party, when they got in, they come here, they promised this, they promised that. He said, well, one guy said to me yesterday, Ron, he said, they promised we a cell phone tower on Fogo Island. Since they got in, he said, we don't even know if they're live or dead. And I said, well, I made some tell them just before I went through the door. I said, well, then the PC party is it over change owners. I said, change owners is fighting for the ferry service. I said, Fogo and change owners is fighting each other, which should not happen. Well, he said, change owners got what they deserve. He said, there's only a handful of people over there. Now, Sue was sitting at the desk. She was fighting the debt. She wouldn't speak. She tried to tell Ryan to shut up. But the man kept on going and kept on going. And I just walked out because I knew that I was going to do this, get on Openline show, because I'm telling you, this is a disgrace to anyone on Fogo Island that did vote. I mean, I didn't because I was living in Nova Scotia. But people that voted this crowd in is shameful to say all those trout running down by the road, and he called me a liar. He put it that way, plain and blunt. So I said, you call me a liar? You're calling everybody on Fogo Island a liar.
So that was the exact word used. He said, Ron, you are a liar.
Yes, he did so. And Sue was there sitting to the desk, and she tried to shut the man up, but he was so ignorant. Paddy, I have met a lot of government people, but never so ignorant as that fella. And so long as he stays in there working, I don't think anyone should vote.
I appreciate the time.
You, those trout, is this happening in St. John's, or Gander, or Grand Falls, or anywhere else in Newfoundland? I called the NTV. They never showed up. I was to CBC last Thursday, and the CBC said when the trout starts running this spring, he said they would come out and take pictures once the trout starts running and down by the road. I said, buddy, I don't even know if there's any left up there to run down through. I can't say there's now, but I promise you there's no big lot.
Ron, what I will do is follow up with DFO. I mean, the political aspect of this, and I wasn't in the room, I don't know who said what when, but it's up to DFO to analyse exactly what's happened and put forward the recommendations for whatever infrastructure is required. I appreciate your time this morning, Ron. I'll follow up.
Well, Paddy, I will be calling back. I just heard you say the crab price. I was talking to fish buyers in Nova Scotia. I know the price in Nova Scotia. And you said the crab price is $2.60 a pound here?
That's what was settled. That's how it's been reported. That's the number I have.
Okay, no, because the buyer's been calling me. Well, we bought a bit of crab there a few years ago. I was on Openline show, and we got boats right now that's ready to leave Newfoundland and come across and sell the crab. But I do know the price in Nova Scotia, but I'm just waiting for the FFAW to come out with the price. And then I will be calling back and telling the fishermen what the buyers in Nova Scotia is paying right now.
Yeah, we understand it's about 80 or 90 cents more on the other side of the Gulf. Ron, I appreciate the time.
You said then.
Okay. What?
Well, Paddy, listen, please understand. Those trout that's dying by the road, if this happened anywhere else in Newfoundland, we would have every radio station or CBC News and NTV News here. I think it's time for Fogo Island be a part of Newfoundland, because we're not. We're nothing there. We ain't got no ferry service. They'll all got two ferries. We got one, and we got a job to get off the island and on. We're gone back 30 years right now here.
Now, more people cross the Tickle than cross on Marine Atlantic, which I always find to be a fascinating stat. Ron, appreciate the time. Off I go.
Okay, Paddy, thank you. Please call DFO, because I'm just waiting for a call too.
We'll follow up.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, quick one. So the office representing Mr. Small say that's not true, and I don't know if they want to supply with more information. But as promised, we did send Newfoundland Labrador Hydro a request for information regarding damage on the Labrador Island Link, and this is how they just got back to us, and we appreciate that. This past weekend, many of our transmission lines were impacted by severe icing events, particularly in White Bay, the Northern Peninsula, and Southern Labrador, resulting in customer outages. A section of the Labrador Island Link was also impacted by ice, although this did not result in a customer outage. Repairs are still underway to 10 towers in Southern Labrador and expected to take about a week. The link will remain offline while repairs are being completed to ensure the safety of our teams and the public. The public is advised to avoid the transmission lines near St. Paul's River Road in Southern Labrador as line work continues and down lines in the area pose a hazard. That's directed from Hydro just a couple of minutes ago. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Tom, you're on the air.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Doing okay this morning. How about you, Tom?
Not too bad. Paddy, I guess this is a morning for people to be frustrated having listened to your previous caller. First of all, climate change is real. We know it's happening, and we know we have to do something about it. Yesterday, I listened to the radio with Mr. Short from Short Financial talking about the carbon tax and how we in this province are benefiting financially as a result of the carbon tax. And man, oh man, I could chew off nails after I listened to what that man said, who was supposed to be an expert on financial issues, and therefore the media go to him to ask for his opinion. Now, most people know me from my position at the Hub or for the couple of dozen books I've written, but prior to that, I was in the finance business. And as a result of being in the finance business, I went to the Canadian Securities Institute and I graduated. Now, for people who don't know what that is, if you want to become a financial planner or a financial advisor or a stockbroker or in any kind of a senior financial position, you have to be a graduate of the Canadian Securities Institute. So when I comment about the carbon tax and the consequences and the implications it has on this province, I think I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. And I have to say that Mr. Short does not. He used the analogy that a person driving a vehicle in this province spends $400 a year extra as a result of the carbon tax, and the provincial and the federal government gives them back $900. Yes, but what happens if there's two families? Two families with two vehicles, which is the case for most of the people in this province today. That's $800. They don't double the carbon tax. Also, the average four-person family in this province spends $16,000 a year in groceries. And Statistics Canada and the trucking industry has already acknowledged that the carbon tax has added 3.5% to their operating costs. That 3.5% is added to groceries. It's added to clothes. It's added to TV sets, and it's added to vehicles and recreational vehicles, and every single thing that we buy in this province that comes here by truck, by plane, or by boat. So the fact that he's saying, and it hasn't been challenged by the media, that we are benefiting financially from the carbon tax, it's too foolish to talk about. It's absolutely too foolish to talk about.
Let's break down some of the numbers.
More.
So,
sorry.
Let's break down some of the numbers.
Yeah.
I suppose when Mr. Short, I wasn't involved in the conversation, when Mr. Short was giving his opinion, not on the policy, but on the mechanics itself. So if you listen to the Parliamentary Budget Office, which I use as a pretty solid source, a trusted source of information, because as often as he sides with the government, he tells them that they're wrong on a variety of things and sets them straight with the math. So I think Yves Giroux is a treasure. Here's the numbers. So in this province, the 15,000 kilometers driven is a hard number. That's just a stat because not everybody's driving across the island all the time. I drive more than 15,000 kilometers personally, and I'm pretty sure I don't get back more than I spend if we look at the overalls. Mr. Giroux's report is pretty clear, and it comes in two components. The Liberals federally will lean on component number one, which he says, if we just talk about tax paid and rebates offered, that yes, somewhere around 7 or 8 Canadians receive more back into the rebate than they spend on carbon tax. But he goes on to say, and this is where the Conservatives hang their hat, when we talk about the overall economic impact in a variety of different sectors. One, transportation, which is a number you just gave. Number two, employment numbers. Number three, the oil and gas sector, and revenues and profits and dividends there. So he says once you factor in the overall economic impact of a carbon tax, most Canadians are not better off. If we simply look at the rebate number as a standalone, which there's no such thing as a standalone in a dynamic economy. Yes, 8 or 10, 7 or 8 out of 10 Canadians do get more back in the rebate, but the overall economic impact, and most notably when we talk about this province, transportation, he says that's where most Canadians are not better off. So I've used those numbers consistently. That's coming directly from Yves Giroux. So he's not saying that the Liberals are good because the rebate is more. He's talking about the overall economic impact leaves most Canadians, and he does not quantify that with a specific number, but that's what he says.
And exactly that's the point I'm trying to make this morning, is that Mr. Short used this simple case of one thing, which is us driving our vehicles. One thing, which is us going to the gas station and paying the extra money, that would extra 16 cents or whatever it is right now for gas and a little bit more for diesel. But he doesn't not take into effect the fact that we are buying everything else that's affected by the carbon tax. And that's the issue.
But again, even in transportation and food, it's 17 cents a litre of carbon tax on gasoline, 21 cents on diesel. If the I think it's 3.2% is the impact on the price of food. And of course, there's a lot more to it too, because even if you look at the Competition Bureau and the lack of competition here and the Big Five gobbling up the vast majority of the market, if it's 3% is the impact on groceries, but we're talking about 17 cents on gasoline, 21 cents on diesel, it still presents a bit of a misconstrued picture of the overall impact. And people talk about the impact on inflation. I don't know if people are in the mood to listen to the Board of Governors at the Bank of Canada, but they say quite clearly 0.15% of inflation can be contributed to the carbon tax. The last thing I'll say, though, Tom, is here's what has not been included in the conversation. And this is not a pro or against carbon tax pricing, but every party suggests that we have to take some policy changes and do something about it. So the question will be, if not the carbon tax, which is supported by many economists, and some have won Nobel Prizes for it. And Stephen Harper on the industrial front was a carbon tax guy. If not that, what? And what does that mean? It's one thing to tell me innovation or technology, but what does that mean? Is it carbon sequestration and carbon capture? How much is that going to cost? Am I going to pay for it? So we haven't taken the next step to say, okay, if we're doing away with this, then replace it with what? Because that's got to be part of it. Because people are going to strike an X on a ballot. And this is going to be one of the key areas of concern here is X the tax and and spike the hike. All right, but with what? And I don't think we've heard enough of that yet.
And I totally agree with you. We have to do something. But the problem is that the carbon tax is not the solution. When you look at Statistics Canada website, you will see, and this is the last time they updated the figures, that between 2021 and 2022, we consumed 5.6% more gasoline by liters than we did in the previous year. So the carbon tax's goal was to get us to reduce the amount of gasoline that we burn. It's not. It's increasing as a result of the carbon tax. So yes, we have to do something, but not something to punish people. The carbon tax is a punishment. We have to reward people. Now, I'm not an economist, and I don't have the solutions. All I'm saying is that, and the purpose of my call this morning was to say that anybody that says that it's benefiting us financially is out to lunch. They're not. Well, we have to find something that rewards people to drive less, to do something, or to put something in place to be able to stop us, And there are programs. In fact, they're coming into my house on the 11th to convert me to the heat pumps and things like this. That's great programs. But the carbon tax is a punishment, not a reward. And it does not reduce our consumption. We still have to drive to school. We have to drive to work. We have to buy groceries. We have to do all of those things.
Sure. But I mean, it might be different for you than it is for me, than it is for Dave. If I'm a single person, 25 years of age, and I got a compact car and I generally just scoot around town, I'm not going to Marble over the winter and that kind of stuff, they are absolutely up money. 100% they are up money. Even when you include transportation and the oil sector and everything else, they are up money. But what percentage of the population is that? Last word, because I do have to get going here, is the gas consumption numbers. There's also what needs to be included in there is just how much the population has grown. Because obviously when the population grows, we're going to consume more of everything, including gasoline and diesel and groceries and all the rest of it. I'll give you the final word, Tom, before I have to go.
No, that's it. You summed it up. I don't want to take any more, and I appreciate you taking my call and listening to my rant. Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care, Tom. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 1. Noreen, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning to you.
I'm phoning about the phones down in Brookside on the Burin Peninsula. They've been gone since March 14th, and the main line that goes to Brookside was the original line that was put there when the phones went to Brookside, and it is running across the bottom of the harbour in Boat Harbour West. How I know this is because I lived in Boat Harbour when they were put through. My father lived in Brookside at one time. I lived there. I came back in Brookside in 2001, and every time that I would go to have my phone repaired, the repairman that would come out would switch me over to another line, and I asked him one time, I said, why is our phone seems like it's cutting off and cutting back in? He said, the main line needs to be repaired, but Bell is not going to do it. But, so he kept coming back. He had come back 3 times until he used up all the lines that he could put me on. He said, if it happens again, he said, there's nothing I'll be able to do for you. But the people that's living in Brookside is mostly senior citizens. There's people down there that are having heart attacks. I got one relation down there that got a bad heart, and the doctors can't do nothing for him. So if anybody down there needs an emergency call put out to an ambulance or anybody else, they can't do it unless they got a cell phone. Then they got to find a reception area in order to get reception to call out, because it's not every place in Brookside that you can call out on a cell phone. And that is the only phone company that is in Brookside. And when they were putting the high-speed internet through from Bowwood Harbor down to Petty Ford, they came to the people in Brookside and asked them, can we cross your land? And you will also get the high-speed internet there, too. So the people gave in and let them go across their land. Now, it was a matter of about 10 to 20 steps away from my house where they put that main line down, and we still didn't get our high speed. So like I said, the Bell company lies to the people in order to get what they want. Now, I did phone Bell, and they told me that the phones was perfect, that they were working. I said, no, they're not. I said, I know for a fact that they're not. Like that. He said, well, it's here on the computer, he said, for all Canada, that Bell is working. I said, no, it is not. I said, it is working in Bowwood Harbor. It is working wherever else, but it is not working in Brookside. And he said, well, I'm going to have to put a note on that.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing from a caller yesterday. Apparently they were speaking with an agent who was located in New Jersey and said, well, the phones are working. I just called the number and the phone was ringing. I said, it might be ringing on your end, but it's not ringing on ours. So
that's right.
Yeah, it's just if they're not working, they're not working. You can't be told they're working by someone sitting in the United States.
But now when there were certain people down there phoned, one got the answer of, it's rain. In the wires that's cutting the phones off. It's only going to take a few days to get it fixed, okay? Another one got a different answer than that. It's the main line. It's cracked up. Then another one phones, we can't get at the main line because there's too much snow to get to the main line to fix it. Then they say, well, we're going to run it on the poles. But yet, they're not the people to phone or give any information over the radio or TV or anything. I'm at the phone TV stations and everything trying to find out answers for all my relatives that live down there. I'm going down tomorrow to see my relatives to see how they're doing, because that's the only way I can find out anything, which is not right. They won't let any other phone company go in that harbor. So people would have a choice to go with another phone company.
So do you have Wi-Fi, or is it simply the phone landlines are down?
Put it this way, the only way you can get internet there is if you go with Bell, you got to have dial-up, which is no good for nothing. So our TVs comes through satellite. Our internet comes through satellite. The only thing is the Bell phone.
Right. Are you able to use your internet or your internet service on your phone to use what they refer to as Wi-Fi calling as an emergency?
As far as I know, they're using internet down there, but that's because they're not with Bell. They're with other companies.
Okay.
Right? Like you can get... now I'll tell you some of them. You can get Bell TV and stuff like that. Now, I don't know if that's working, but a lot of people left that Bell satellite service because it was so expensive, and they went with exploring it. That's what I had down there for my TV and my internet, right? And there's a thing now, Starlink is another one that they can have down there for their internet. I don't know about their TV, but the government don't care. The government do care in one way. I know the last government did, because they were willing to pay Bell Alliant 75% to put the high-speed internet in Brookside, and Bell Alliant wouldn't do it because he said it wasn't enough people living there. But I'm after talking to Bell Alliant myself, I said to myself, how do you know there's not enough people here to take up your service? I said, because I went to every house in Brookside that got internet and asked them, if we had high-speed internet from Bell, would you give up what you got and go with them? And they said, yes, in a heartbeat. So, we're willing to go with them, but they're not willing to come to us.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to find some decent contact points for customers of Bell yesterday. I came up with the same ones. I actually called a couple to see if I'd have any satisfaction before I just went in and put it out over the air. I'll call this number, call that number. I wasn't getting anywhere, so I'm still looking around.
Yeah, I know. Look, even our MHA up here, he put one thing on Facebook about the phones, and that's it. We haven't heard nothing else. Like the people down there, I really pity the people down there because they're really not getting no help. And I moved out there in 2001 in Brookside, and I got married out there. And I'm originally from Boat Harbor, but I moved out of Brookside last November, right? But I'm really concerned about the people down there that may need this ambulance service or a fire truck.
Yeah, because we're not talking about, an interruption that's only lasted a few days. It's the 2nd of April, and this started on the 14th or 15th of March, so it's obviously a big problem. Noreen, I'm going to keep trying to get an appropriate contact at Bell so we can see if we can get the folks in Brookside a bit of help, and I appreciate your time this morning. We're off to the news.
Yeah, and more besides, I was talking to you before about medications.
Okay.
I got to pay 99.3%.
Oh, yes.
I found out I got to pay 100%.
You're not the first person to relay that unfortunate story to me either.
No, so thank you for listening to me. I've contacted all the news outlets and everything, and it doesn't seem anybody is interested in doing it.
I appreciate the time, Noreen.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And hopefully Bell can get at that. I mean, people are obviously and rightfully worried about what if something goes horribly wrong and they're unable to contact first responders or whatever the case may be. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're talking wind energy, carbon tax, whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Join us on line number 5 is mental health advocate and friend of the show, Christy Allen. Good morning, Christy. You're on the air.
Hey, Patty. How's it going?
Doing okay this morning. Thanks. How about you?
Oh, I'm really, really frustrated. I was driving to work this morning and I was listening to the Premier talking about the carbon tax. And I understand that a lot of people are upset about it, but I just became more and more frustrated because he was saying that, we don't have buses or trains or things that will help people reduce their carbon footprint, and he doesn't agree that this should happen. He wanted to call an emergency meeting, and the more he talked, the more frustrated I got because I understand that the carbon tax is very, very different than the mental health program called Wellness Together. But the thing is that we are losing it, and the Premier and Tom Osborne and Tony Wakeham and among other people who are speaking about this carbon tax aren't speaking up about how we are losing this tomorrow. And there is a mental health crisis in our country, and they are not speaking up that we are losing a 24/7 service. The only thing that has been said is by Tom Osborne, and that it's that he's not concerned. And that makes me so angry because he says that Bridge the Gap is there, that we have other programs. But the reality is that we don't have any other 24/7 service like Wellness Together. And we are hearing all this stuff about the carbon tax. The Premier says, there's not something that Newfoundlanders can do. Well, we're in the same boat with Wellness Together, and he hasn't asked for an emergency meeting. He hasn't asked for the government to help with this. And I'm fed up, and I'm so frustrated, and I'm sorry if I'm getting worked up, but it just feels like they aren't listening. And, it's personal. It's so personal to lose things like this, and it feels like the people who are using them, they have to be vulnerable. They have to talk about how it affects them. And our government isn't standing up for us. And I'm fed up. And I needed to say it.
I'm glad you did. I don't know if you heard the top of the show this morning, but I knew the funding was drying up tomorrow, so I spoke to it myself this morning, and it's not only Wellness Together, it's Pocket Well as well, at the companion application for Wellness Together. There are stories regarding patient therapists in other parts of the country that are not only using it themselves, but are referring their clients or their patients onto this app as well. You've heard me refer many, many people over the course of the pandemic to Wellness Together with great success. People report back and say, say this has been really helpful, because it is. I mean, a 24/7 service, there's really nothing quite like it out there. We can talk about 811 and the new crisis line and all of those things, and yes, they're all helpful, but doing away with any component inside the world of mental illness, mental wellness, mental health, and or addictions, which is also part of wellness together, is a mistake. So on top of, our provincial politicians hyper-focused in on the politics of a carbon tax, I would also suggest our federal members need to speak up on this one, because it is a federally funded program, but there's no solid argument for it to go away as of tomorrow. There just is not.
There isn't, and it comes down to, it seems like the politicians just don't care. And I understand that it's uncomfortable and that the carbon tax is a very popular thing to be talking about right now, but it's not okay how they are just ignoring this. It is simply not, and I am so frustrated that Tom Osborne says that he doesn't think that it's a huge problem because there's a limited number of people who use it after hours. What makes those people less valuable? What makes their mental health less important just because there's less of them? We have so many people. I don't care if it's one person. There should be something available to that person after hours if that's what they need. You and I are on the exact same page. And you've been amazing about this, and I know that you've brought it up several times. And to be honest, I wanted to call, but I'm not doing well, and why is it on people who are not okay to voice about it? And you have been amazing, and you have brought awareness to it when they refused to talk about it in the pandemic, and I'm so grateful to you for that. Sure, I shouldn't say in the pandemic, but during the lockdowns. And I'm just I'm actually shaking here. I probably shouldn't call in when I'm so worked up, but it should not be on people who are in the thick of it to call.
And, so many people who may indeed be in need of those types of services, we know the unfortunate reality is that they're hesitant to speak out, to acknowledge their need, to talk about their own personal experience live on the public airwaves. Thankfully, you've been willing to do so, which I think is extremely helpful. And in that world, it does seem like a complete dismissal or oblivious to the reality. To see something go away that is absolutely working and to label it as no big deal is either one, a complete misunderstanding of the situation that Canadians are facing, or two, is trying not to run afoul of your federal counterparts. Neither one of them are acceptable. Mental health services in this province are lacking. You and your friends have been talking about access to long-term mental health care for, I don't know what the tally is now, 170 weeks or something, and I don't know if it's getting any traction. We see things like the progress report on mental health services towards recovery, I think it's called, and the commitment of 9% of the healthcare budget and measurable goals as to whether or not we're actually getting where we need to be, and I don't think we are. Now, I also have to add this to the conversation. I was reminded by Vince Withers at the Eating Disorder Foundation one time, please don't talk about it like there is absolutely no help out there, because there is. Because when we say there's no help and no hope, then people who may be considering reaching out might not do it because they think, well, Paddy Daly said there's no hope out there, so why bother? So just, if you need help, try to get it. We'll try to put you onto the right support system. But it's just not good enough. So I'm going to call on, not only you mentioned the Premier and Mr. Wakeham and Minister Osborne, but I'm also going to call on our elected members of Parliament, whether it be Cliff Small at the CPC or all of our Liberal members, to not speak to this is losing track of some of the most important things in the country. Yes, the carbon tax is sexy and it's controversial. And yes, funding programs for whatever, wind projects or school lunch programs, yes, they all play a role in our day-to-day lives. But mental health concerns are overwhelmingly real. And please, for all of those aforementioned politicians, let us know where you stand on this one. And if you're someone who simply thinks it's not a big deal, then I would suggest you need to go back to the drawing board and up your understanding of what Canadians are facing.
Absolutely, and I would speak especially to the MPs that should be speaking up about it, because as you know, MAID is being, I know they've paused it, but eventually they want it to include mental illness, and there should be every single available thing for people who are suffering. And I know that's a whole other conversation, but I can't believe they are getting rid of that as they also discuss access to MAID for mental illness. And so, yes, absolutely, our members of Parliament, I feel extreme frustration. There was members of Parliament who shared the story about me demonstrating on my wedding day about access to long-term mental health care. And so for their silence, it just means that they shared that because it was getting attention that day. And that makes me feel sick to my stomach.
And it shouldn't be that way. Christy, I know that you're not doing well. I wish it was different, but through that, your want to call the show this morning is deeply appreciated. I wish you nothing but the best, and I'm always just around the digital corner if you need to talk.
Thank you very much, Patty. Can I add one thing?
Sure can.
I know you've been talking a lot about education. I've been listening to it. I actually find it difficult to listen to because I really struggled during school. And I just want to say to parents out there, I'm not criticizing any parents, but as someone whose mental illness was, they believe, triggered by things that happened to me in school, I really hope they open that dialogue with their children and keep an eye out for the signs of serious mental illness. I understand that everybody's mental wellness is suffering, and that is no less important than, a mental illness. But every time I listen to that, I think about if people in my life had been educated and seen the signs, if I had been able to have early intervention. And I just really want to encourage parents to listen to their kids and to educate themselves about the signs of not just not being okay, but mental illness, because I know my mom said that it was like a light went on when I was diagnosed and my whole life made sense to her and she wished that she had known more. So it's just a plea to parents to educate themselves. And I'm not saying they're not doing enough, but that conversation has actually been really hard to listen to as someone who got really sick because of things that happened in school.
I appreciate your time,
Sorry
Christy.
to take up so much time.
Not a problem whatsoever. Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Let's take a break. Walter, you're next to talk about the carbon tax. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 4. Walter, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
Yes, I want a few things to say about the carbon tax, but one of your previous callers touched on a lot of the points that I was going to mention. In particular, Mr. Short interview there by that news reporter. Usually when news reporters go to do an interview with someone, they have a number of questions. I found there was only one question, and that's exactly, did he think that the carbon tax was a good thing? And he said yes, and I thought that was kind of odd. The other point on that was he did interviews on the streets of St. John's, and they only played one interview where the person was in favor of the carbon tax, which seemed rather odd to me.
Why is that?
Well, I'm sure there's different opinions on the street. There's some good and some bad. We live in a place right now where I think it's in the 70% range of people aren't in favor of the carbon tax. And, we tend to focus on gasoline and gasoline only with the carbon tax. Now, I've done a lot of traveling in the last year, and I'm in the process of moving back to Newfoundland, so I've driven partly across Canada a few times, and some of the things that I've encountered is with the carbon tax at the post office. At the post office, I send some parcels home here, and with a $40 parcel, you're paying an extra $23 in carbon tax on $40. If you cross on Marine Atlantic, which I did twice last year, there was carbon tax on that. Your heating, I'm paying right now roughly $70 a month in carbon tax on my heating. But we tend to focus more on the gasoline more than anything when you talk to those economists and stuff.
Well, I make every effort to talk about it in its entirety, because, we right off the top this morning talked about the Parliamentary Budget Office and how he talks about the carbon tax. And if it's just a sole reference to how much tax individuals pay and the amount that they get in the form of the rebate, then yes, many Canadians are better off. But unless we include the implications regarding the areas that Mr. Giroux talks about, is transportation, employment, the oil and gas sector, their profits and their dividends, which I'm not too concerned about that last one. But the other one, the big implication for us is transportation. And it's real. Tom Badcock's numbers this morning was about 3.2% is the implication and the increase in the cost of groceries with the carbon tax in place. What I'll also add to that is that, do we really think, well, let's just talk about groceries, because that includes a lot of things, right? That includes the supply chain, the growing, the farmers, the trucking, and all the rest of it. So if the carbon tax goes away, do people think the price of groceries is coming back to earth? I mean, do we really think that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, it's made that change now, and it'll never go back. That's the sad part about all this. But at least it won't keep growing, I suppose, as it has in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, and inside the world of the grocery chains, and we have a competition problem, which has been quite clearly identified by the Competition Bureau. But there's also a climate change impact with the price of groceries, isn't there? Because you can look at things like disease, flooding, droughts. They all contribute to the price of groceries. So the unfortunate reality of where we find ourselves is, if we talk about something as big as and as complicated as climate change, the vast majority of the conversation only includes the carbon tax and nothing else. So there's a cost of doing business here. If it's not the carbon tax, then what is it? If it's technology and innovation, what does that mean? How much that costs? Who pays for it? How effective can it be? Those are things that have been left out of this conversation. So at this moment in time, the carbon tax is simply a political conversation. It's not a legitimate policy conversation.
No, I agree with that. I mean, there has to be some other alternative to this, and I don't think the carbon tax is working. I've said this morning that, the liters of oil and gas consumed has gone up over the past few years, so it's not a deterrent in that respect. And, if we're saying that we're giving back more money than we're taking in, I mean, that's a red flag right there. That doesn't work.
Well, for some it will, because it works a couple of ways. Now, I think it's the initial price point pressure that might work for some, but if the encouragement is to consume less, for instance, and hasn't just been one policy, for instance, the issues regarding swapping from oil to heat pumps and mini splits, electric furnaces and stuff, improving your insulation in your windows, all the little things that we can do, and people might choose to purchase a vehicle that consumes and uses less fuel. So all of those little things in conjunction are all part of a comprehensive suite of approaches to this particular issue. It's not just the carbon tax, even though many people want us to talk about that and nothing but. So, and I mean, I look forward to my next conversation with Mr. Poilievre. He's way ahead in the polls, and if the election was today, he'd be the Prime Minister. And we just need to know a little bit more about what he thinks. He does say that the party understands climate change, man's role in, and the want or need to do something about it, but no real understanding what that means. And I think that's important, because if we're just going to, have the votes on who has the best slogan, I'm not so sure we're going to make good decisions here. We need actual detailed information. And I think the Liberals have done a terrible job as it comes to what the carbon tax means, how it works, and what the intentions are, what the goals are. Are we measuring them? I mean, Mr. Guilbeault is a confusing fella to begin with. And he says, well, we're not even really measuring the emissions and how effective the carbon tax is. Well, for the love of God, if it's one of the linchpins of the Liberals' platform, then how can we not be understanding the measurables? I just don't get it.
No, nor do I. And you know what? I am not with any political party. I'm not pulling any strings for anyone. It's just that it's all very confusing, and I don't think it's amounting to too much for the planet itself or, the good of the people. I think, it's just not a good thing.
I appreciate the time, Walter, and your patience this morning. Thanks for the call.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome,
Bye.
sir. Bye-bye. Where would you like me to go here now, Dave? 2? Or which one? 2 is a good one? Let's go to line number 2. Marilyn, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you this morning?
Okay, thanks. How about you?
Good, thank you. Very interesting show so far. I just want to talk about the recent floods on the Port of War Peninsula and how it pertains to this proposed project that Royal Energy GH2 is wanting to put, over our heads. So everything runs downhill. I've said this, a few times once on your show, and I've submitted to letters to the government officials. We live downhill from mountaintops. Everything runs downhill when you got 6 million pounds of explosives that are going to be used for the cement basis of these monstrous wind turbines 1 kilometer from our homes. You're going to have everything removed from the mountaintops, the trees, the bog, everything that holds water back will now be coming at us. So we've seen the floods over the weekend. We've seen the roads washing out. We've seen brooks where there weren't brooks before. People, a couple had lost their house on the weekend. Very unfortunate. My heart goes out to them. They didn't have insurance. And if this project proceeds, there will be mudslides and these homes will be going into the ocean. There's no doubt in my mind this will happen. So Mother Nature just gave the government a little wake-up call, if you will. And I think it's time for them to start listening. There's an area just where that house was destroyed in March's Point, when that road washed out, where that brook is. They're proposing turbines straight up from there, about 1 kilometer up from their house. And there's also a rock area on top of that hill. And when you look at it, you're looking at a massive hill of rocks that are falling into that road, some the size 4x4, and I have a picture of it. And I've called Tony Wakeham, I've emailed Tony Wakeham, and I've emailed the mayor of the town of Cape St. George. And nothing has been done about that rock area. When you have blasting and heavy rains, one of these days, that mountain is going to come down. And whoever's on the road at the time will go over the embankment, which is right directly across the road. It's about a 100-foot drop. Very bad area. I've written to the government about this as well as part of my submission for the EIS. Next, I'm going to go on to EnviroWatch. They did an online wind forum on March 19th. Patty, were you able to listen in on that?
No, I wasn't. I was tied up. But let me, just before we move on to EnviroWatch, are you saying that the landslide-related issue is related to wind projects because of the clearing of land to accommodate the turbines? Is that the link you're making?
I'm saying the potential for mudslides in the future when there's no trees to hold back the water on top of those mountains from the blasting of the 6 million pounds of explosives, because they're taking off our mountaintops, Patty. They're right behind our heads. These mountains are above us. Everything runs downhill. And what you've seen over the weekend is just an example of what will happen. Roads were washed out. Rocks were coming down. I mean, we've never seen this sort of destruction before. And when you take the bog off the top of the mountain, there's nothing holding the water back. If you want to save the climate and save the earth, you cannot destroy it to save it. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, okay? And trees, I mean, we need to plant trees. We don't need to be cutting them down and destroying our mountaintops. It just doesn't make sense, Patty. So the
Corner Brook, Lark Harbour, Cape St. George, these have nothing to do with wind, but what you're saying is with all the devegetation required for building the towers, that will lead to the potential for more of these events. That's the summary.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely, Patty. Yes. Okay, so getting to EnviroWatch, so you never had a chance to see that online public wind forum. So on March 19th, EnviroWatch, who is an environmental group that started up, as a result of these impending projects that, are moving too fast, too big, and other things too, like, fish farms and whatnot. So they had a wind forum on March 19th. It was an online forum, and they had 3 panelists, and, they did a presentation and people could call and ask questions. So one of the panelists was Joan Baxter, and I don't know if you're familiar with her. She is a reporter from the Halifax Examiner. And she talked about the latest round of MOU signing in Hamburg, Germany. Have you been caught up to speed on what happened there, Patty?
Yeah, I've seen the stories.
Okay, perfect. So the gist of it was, there were no offtake agreements signed, no offtake contracts signed at that particular conference. And there was two players there. John Risley was there and Trent Vici of Everwind. And the reporter that was there said that they were both pissed off. They'd asked Trent Vici to do an interview, and he said no comment. They wanted to know how it went, and he said no comment. And John Risley was complaining about governments. So both of them were pissed off. So they came out of there obviously not happy with the way things went. But she also talked about Ravi Sood, who is the one that's got the Central project in the works. And he was, I guess, the CEO of Feronia Inc., and she said he has a very bad reputation as far as human rights violations go and land grabs and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, but we have control here. What he's done elsewhere is not really...
I hope. But what are the common theme was with these three and the projects proposed was that these three gentlemen were subsidy harvesters. So this is subsidy harvesting projects. I mean, Ravi's from Hong Kong, and he's over here following the money. And when we first met John Risley at the meeting in Cape St. George on July 6, 2022, he was there and he said, I will not be using any government money for this project. This is all going to be my money and our money, but this is, no provincial or federal money will be involved. And now it seems like the man cannot move without the subsidies from the government. So we've done a total U-turn here. And that is, it just goes to show his character. Now, the second panelist was Robert Loader from Central.
Let's just add to Mr. Risley's comments there for a second, though.
All right.
So you're right. He said, I'm not going to take any government monies. But there was always in play at the exact same time the access to tax subsidies federally. Now, we still don't know how that's going to work. There's no firm definition of green because a wind project in Nova Scotia is nowhere near as green as a project in this province. Why? Because we've got about 80% renewables versus in Nova Scotia, they've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 50. So they should not qualify for the same tax subsidies. Hopefully that definition is very tight because it's the difference between 15% and 40% tax breaks from the federal government. In addition to that, Mr. Risley did ask for and get a $128 million line of credit that is different than the upfront loan because he can use it when he wants and doesn't have to go back to the well time and time again, but it's still $128 million. So you're right. He said we will not be getting that money. He never mentioned the tax subsidies, even though we all knew that they were in play. But yes, $128 million is the number.
It's all about the money, Patty. They're not here to do us any favors. Trust me. So Robert Loader, another panelist from Central, he was from Point Leamington, and he talked about the proposed wind farm in his area. And what was interesting, and it kind of set off a bell for me, is when he talked about the mayor from his area who wrote a letter of support for the project, before the people even knew anything about it. So same situation as us. And then the community, once they found out the size and scope and everything else to do with this wind farm, wanted him to resend his letter of support until they, could gather more information, have more consultations, etc. And what the mayor said to him was, I won't be doing that. This is a done deal. And if we're not at the table, we're not going to get anything. Now, the phrase a done deal, we've been hearing this from day one. And I can tell the people of Newfoundland and Labrador that this is never going to be a done deal if you don't want it to be a done deal. They tell you this is a done deal, so you get on board. You feel like if you don't sign on, you're going to miss out. But it's all part of their strategy, and that's what they tell you from day one. And people have to be aware of how they're kind of controlling the narrative, and they have this master plan when they're coming into these areas. When we met with John Risley, he wanted to fly us up to Haldimand County in Hamilton, Ontario, and see a wind farm there. So all the leaders of the communities had the opportunity to go up. Now, by the grace of God, I had COVID, and I didn't go. And you know what? I thank God I didn't go, because when the mayors came back and the leaders of the communities, most of them were quiet. They were so quiet, it was eerie. And I'll tell you why. We were part of what was called the Port-a-Port Vibrancy Fund. It was called something else in the beginning, but then it turned into the Vibrancy Fund in the end, because they didn't want anything to do with the environment side of it. So I dropped off of that committee because I didn't want to be a part of something that was going to destroy our peninsula.
Okay, I'll just give you a couple of more seconds to wrap up your thoughts, Marilyn, because I'm late.
Okay, well, I won't go into that. I'll just say that, as a part of the agreement in Haldimand, they weren't allowed to, they have to remain neutral to receive any funds from this project. So they can't talk for and they can't talk against wind farms. They have to remain neutral. And if they don't, they won't receive any money. And that's why you don't hear from the mayors on the peninsula about this. They don't speak out about it. They're not allowed to. So they're dummied up. I will say this is too close of a relationship between the government, John Risley, Andrew Fury, Goody Hutchings, Brendan Paddock, George Fury. These people are all in bed together. They have been from day one. John Risley's been, lobbying the government from day one. And one more thing, Patty, and this is very important, very important. Article 28 of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. We have the right to live in peace. And that's all we're asking for. Okay?
I appreciate your time, Marilyn. Thank you for the call.
Okay, you too.
Okay, bye-bye. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Mike, you're on the air.
Yes, good day, Paddy.
Good day to you.
Called Paddy to briefly talk about the wind turbines projects that the government's planning, but I'd like to mention a couple other things first, and how government handles these projects and stuff. And I want to mention two very briefly, and I'll just go into the highlights. When Muscat Falls was talked about and stuff, it was a $6 billion project. It's $13.5 billion and ongoing. We're going to shut down Hollywood Generating Station. They don't know if they'll ever be able to shut it down. And I'll move on from that one quickly. Another project that comes to mind was when they're going to ship toxic garbage here in Newfoundland, and we're going to incinerate it, and we're going to save the world. But anyway...
but on that one we didn't.
On that one we didn't, no. But I just, the bells and whistles when these projects comes up from the government, they're good at that, but they're not good at thinking things through.
Well, let's just stick to what you just said there. So Muskrat, as we found out during the LeBlanc inquiry, we just didn't have all the actual information that was in hand. We were purposefully bamboozled, which is vastly different than some other issues. The incineration plan for Lewisport, the government went all the way back to Clyde Wells and said that we've already figured this out via legislation. We're not importing garbage, and so consequently we didn't then and we're not in the future. So they're all a little bit different. So how are you drawing the line between those two and wind, for instance?
Okay. Well, we won't give government too much credit on that.
I'm not giving them any credit. I'm just saying that's what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I just want to get into this wind turbines, and I don't know if everybody knows what's actually involved in this and how they're trying to railroad this down our throats and stuff in it there. But we are talking about 1.6 million hectares of our environment that'll be tore up by roads and blasting and hills and everything. That's one thing.
But that was
we're talking 600.
But that's not accurate though, Mike. That was the initial conversation, that there could be up to that many hectares. But inside the five proposals that are in place, we're nowhere near that number. So when they initially said, when they plotted the entire province for where they might see wind proposals, you're right, it was 1.6 million hectares. But the number of applicants that have come forward, we're nowhere near that.
Okay. Well, with the two projects that are on the go now that are getting fast-tracked, and that they're Port-a-Port and down Bjorn Way and stuff, and that there's roughly about 650 towers planned. Right, so I'll leave that at that. But I want to move into something else and stuff in it there too. We all know about the beautiful commercials we've had over the years for tourism and how we attracted tourism to our province. And by God, it worked out. I think it's at 1.2 it was over $2 billion, and I think it was roughly, that was pre-COVID, and I think we're into about 1.2 was last year. $1 billion that we attract with tourists that come here, which is absolutely beautiful. And they come here because we are unique. Our landscape is pristine. It's not cluttered by these towering monsters. And we're talking 600 feet, and we're talking thousands of them if this gets a go-ahead. Right? So what's that going to do to our tourism? I'm sure it's not going to help it. We'll have to redo all our commercials when we do it with the drones and stuff and that there, and incorporate these wind turbines into it.
So
right?
the number you used of did you say $1.2 billion in tourism?
Yes, yeah.
That the government spends on tourism?
No, that brings into this province.
Yeah, because the government really doesn't spend a whole lot of money on tourism, to be honest with you. And you're right, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion industry. And of course, if we're talking about wind turbines or I don't know if you're wrong or not, and you're probably right, but just add to it some of the implications of other industries that we understand. So, for instance, forestry, mining, when we talk about onshore big developments, it's long been a feature of this province right across the country. Add oil in the province of Alberta, their tourism numbers are off the charts. I lived there in the and worked in the hospitality industry for almost a decade. So for me, and I'll get your thoughts on this, I think we think about wind much differently than we do other major developments. Why? Because we kind of know how the oil industry works, for the most part. We kind of know about mining and what that looks for a footprint. We kind of know about forestry and what that means for footprint. We know a bit about how aquaculture works because it's here. But because this is so brand new, it's got many people really up on their arms. And I think some of it is, one, John Risley, two, because it's so new. What do you think?
Yeah. I think this is the worst, possibly the most worst decision that could ever happen in Newfoundland. And because there's a pile of dangers that goes with this, Paddy. Well, the government are good at bells and whistles, but they're not good at facts. And all of these wind turbines are projected and geared up for developing hydrogen, strictly hydrogen. You know what I mean? And there's millions and millions of cubic water that goes along with making hydrogen. So that's got to come from the lakes and the rivers of this province and stuff. Millions of cubic meters, right? It takes, for 2 kilograms of hydrogen, it takes 9 liters of water, and so do the math. But that's one thing.
Yeah, on that front, because these are good points, Mike. On that front, when it comes to just developing hydrogen with the wind power, the unfortunate reality is there's also going to be the implication of us having to sell them power and then them selling us power back to our public grid. We don't know how that's going to work or how much it's going to cost.
Nope.
The water...
And that's why, like with Seamus O'Regan, why would we rush this through and rush through environmental assessment? Like, if you listen to Seamus O'Regan, we got to do this and do this now. Well, that's the approach that government has had in the past, and it's failed them every single time. And they're not listening to the people, and where they're living to, you got to picture this. Do you want this? Will we have it on the south sides, on the hills and stuff, and would they have it there up in Dannyland? No. Right? These are out in rural areas where there's not a lot of votes and it's getting jammed down people's throats. But I still want to go on, and this is really, really important.
Well, let's stick with the water for a second, though, Mike, because this is important stuff. I think the royalty on water is far too low, in my personal opinion, and we don't even get to collect royalties until the proponent recoups all of their capital investment, which is a long way down the road. But on water, if we only talk about World Energy GH2, their water source is the old commercial Abitibi Reservoir, and for the entirety of their project, they don't need anywhere near as all the water that's currently in that reservoir. So that is a bit different than the lakes and streams and, drinking water, groundwater, aquifers and what have you. So that's that one. I'll let you make what you say is your final point here. Go right ahead.
Okay, and this is a really, really important point and stuff. And this call is dangerous to the public, eh? And what the government is not telling you, the production of hydrogen is done under high pressure. Hydrogen is a gas that when it goes bang, it goes bang. So here we are. We're going to be compressing it. We're going to be storing it in these big storage units. It's going to be transferred from the storage units to the ship ports and stuff. We're going to have ships coming in here that are basically atomic bombs coming in and out of our port, loading hydrogen. It is one. I've worked in the oil industry. I worked off on Hibernia. I've been around this stuff all my life. This is high pressure stuff. One mistake becomes a really, really big mistake. And we're planning on putting this close to communities, these storage units. And when that goes bang, Paddy, that goes bang. I'm telling you right now.
We're actually shipping it as ammonia.
Yeah.
So the hydrolysis,
high pressure.
Yeah, but vastly reduced. As you know, if you've worked in those big industries, that's the chosen medium to transport the hydrogen, because it does come with a significant energy loss. And yes, of course, there's some distinct dangers associated with ammonia as well. But when we talk about the high pressurized nature of hydrogen, it's less when you use ammonia as the medium to ship. I'll give you the final word, Mike, because they're flagging me off to the break.
Okay, and here's the other thing. These thousands of towers, and right now there's 650 planned now, and then I'm looking at the ones that are going to go right across the Isthmus and out to Clarenville and stuff. Like when you leave here now from St. John's and drive to Port of Bath, if this madness was to continue, this is all you're going to see. And that's what I'm saying about tourism. But before I lose track of thought, once we install all these towers, and I'm telling you, they're known to fail. All you got to do is Google it and tower failures and everything else. We are at the risk of, well, we're going to be over the thousands when you get these projects done. It could be 1,500, it could be 2,000 or whatever. So we got these towers peppered all around our landscape. If they fall, if they fail, and we know these towers can fail. We're already trying to fix up Muskrat Falls towers, right? But if they fail, the risk of forest fires and environmental damage is unbelievable, right? It's the worst idea that the Liberal government, they've outdone themselves this time to bring wind turbines into this province. They must have stayed up late at night, and what is the project we can come up with that's connected with the most insanity? And this is it. You know? I can't even picture it, Paddy. Can Newfoundlanders, and 500 Newfoundlanders, what we got here, what people from every corner of the world comes to see, and deliberately, purposely destroy it because of the insanity from a few in the Liberal government that will fill their pockets. They'll have to buy extra pairs of pants. You know, this is what it's all about. It's not because it's a good project for Newfoundlanders. This is make hydrogen and send it overseas. Germany, let them make their own hydrogen. All the people that are going to buy the hydrogen from us, let them do it on their own homeland.
I'm not so sure this is a Liberal industry. Our closest relative here in Atlantic Canada, being Nova Scotia, the minister there, or pardon me, the premier there, Tim Houston, is a Conservative, and he's all in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, anyway, Mike, I appreciate the time, sir. Thanks for the call.
Okay, thank you very much, Paddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one and say good morning to the chair of St. John's Pride. That's Eddie Sencour. Eddie, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy. How you doing?
Doing okay. A bit tongue-tied sometimes.
Yeah, no, listen, I knew which province I moved to with a French last name. You're not the first and you won't be the last.
I'm married to a French girl.
Oh, so you'll hear it when you get home.
Absolutely right. I appreciate the time, Eddie. What's on your mind?
No, Sweat, thanks for taking my call today. I just wanted to let your listeners know that the Pride Parade is open registrations for this summer, and we're hoping to get a lot of people sign up so that we can have just as big of a festival as we did last year. And already we had people reach out to us in January asking about the parade, and I think already, just as of yesterday, we've got a half a dozen applicants. So people are ready to go, and that's really exciting, and hopefully now people will have some lead time. And we might see some neat floats this year. That's something we're trying to see.
And when is the parade, Eddie?
So the parade takes place this year on the 21st of July. So it's the third weekend in July, and that'll kind of be the culmination of the festival. So everything will lead up to that, and then that afternoon we're planning on doing our Pride in the Park celebration that we do every year. Last year we had such a great weather and such a great turnout that I think there were thousands of people in Bannerman Park. I've never seen it so packed outside of a folk festival. So we're hoping again to have that same momentum and that same energy for the community this summer.
Eddie, anything to do with Pride, whether it be a crosswalk to a parade to a story time, anything like that has become a real firebrand. It is a political hot potato. It has been not only controversial but potentially dangerous. What do you say to folks who, they'll use this reference, I'm getting something shoved down my throat, enough is enough, all those types of things. You have heard them all just like I've heard them all. What do you say in reaction?
Stay home. Stay home. Like at the end of the day, and I don't think that and what you said is that sometimes it could be dangerous. I think that it has been dangerous, and it is dangerous. There are members of the community who have reached out to us to tell us that they're concerned and they're afraid that there's this animosity being targeted towards them because they're living their true, authentic selves. And the same as I said last year when we were having this discussion about, people saying these kinds of things, and stay home. You're not there, yes. Hopefully someday you will be, but I'm not going to entertain any discussion from people saying that because we're trying to create a safe space for the community where people can get together and be their true, authentic selves, that somebody being uncomfortable by that is enough to stop the community. It's these kinds of movements and these kinds of parades and Pride itself was born out of a protest against violence and targeted hate that was sent towards the community, and this is the response to it. And we're now decades long into it. And so long as there are young people out there that are facing this animosity because they're navigating finding their community, and the same as people kind of get older and they encounter these prejudices against them, we're going to continue to have pride. That's the entire point. And when we hit that point where we hit equality or parity with people who don't identify the community, and I don't know if we'll ever get there, but until we hit that point, that's why these kinds of get-togethers are important, because as much as there's so much hate out there for people from our community, the big thing that we want them to know is that the community exists, and you're a part of it, and you're welcome to it if that's what you're looking for, and we're there to welcome you with open arms. And I don't care if somebody wants to get in my face about it, and go for it. They won't be the first and they won't be the last. But somebody else's animosity for something that doesn't actually impact them, and they don't identify with the community, and it doesn't impact their lives, pick another topic. Stop making marginalized people the target when these things come up, and I'm just speaking from my experience. But when you add, we have people in our community who are members of other visible minorities, whether it be people of color, whether it be people who have an Indigenous background, or even trans people that are presenting, and we have all of this hate targeted towards them from people where it doesn't impact their daily lives. And it's an interesting phenomenon to watch, but it's certainly not going to make the community stop, and we're going to continue to make sure that people have safe places to gather every year, and then also throughout the year as well. We had great success with the Canadian Pride Curling Championships, bringing people out and bringing people together from across the country, and that's what we're going to build on.
What's the registration process, Eddie, before we get to the news?
So people can just go to stjpride.ca, and there's a link up at the top that says Parade or Festival 2024, and right under there's a link that says Join the Parade. All the instructions are there. The parade team has put together a really comprehensive breakdown of what to expect and what we kind of need for insurance purposes and those kinds of things to satisfy the city. And once that committee has a chance to vet the applications and make sure that they're all in line with the community, you'll get your information package, and we'll see you on the 21st.
I appreciate the time, Eddie. Thanks for the call.
No sweat. Thanks so much, Patty.
Pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's see here. Before we get a break for the news, let's see what's coming up. Jeff wants to talk about the cost of living up in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Tony wants to talk about concerns at the Waterford, education, neurologist shortage, whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 7. Say good morning to Ward 4 Councillor in the City of St. John's. That's Tom Davis. Tom, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
I want to start with Council hat on and mention a lot of reports we're getting about dogs off leash on walking trails, and at least one serious incident where another dog on leash was attacked and the owner and the dog on leash were both bitten. So we want to remind people that they need to keep their dogs on leash. And also, along those lines, dog feces not being picked up, so left in its deposited form, or even people who go to the trouble of picking it up into a bag and then leave the bags around is disgusting and is really gross in the spring, obviously, because that's when it all melts out, and that's when it becomes very, very obvious.
Oh, and that's every single spring. I mean, I live back onto a green space, and that's the nature of the beast. So you would hope that dog owners, they know the rules, but some of them are seemingly oblivious to the rules. They look around, see if anyone's looking, and they don't pick up their dogs do, and off they go. It's terrible.
Well, within our community, it doesn't work if people aren't doing their part. So, strong reminder, and if you know of people who maybe need to be reminded in a polite way, we need to do better. Along those lines as well, I'm trying to organize community cleanups throughout my ward. Kim Terrace is already on board. I don't really have a really easy way of talking to the other different parts, so I want to encourage people to reach out to me at tdavis@stjohns.ca so we can get hopefully the whole city cleaned up, but I'm going to focus on my ward.
Fair enough.
So, we're having these difficult conversations about a lot of different things that I think are symptoms of problems, and we want to call them problems, but the mental health and the physical health issues and the homelessness and the addictions and a lot of these things, I think a lot of us would agree they seem to be more symptoms of a bigger problem. And I want to try and draw a straight line to, I guess, a lack of adulting. There's a book that a lot of us had to read in school called Lord of the Flies, and it basically is the story of a group of children who get stranded on an island. And pretty quickly, without adults and rules, they descend into chaos and savagery. And I think I was reading a psychology paper, and basically psychologists are finding that a lot of people are seeking out maturity. And a lot of people, society doesn't seem to work all that well when people look around and they don't see adults who are acting like adults and who do the difficult things. And when things are really hard, who people can trust. And, that could be matriarchs and patriarchs. It can be community leaders. And I think that we need to reflect on that and try and figure out a way to get more of this maturity. What exactly, how does that manifest itself, within our community? But, I think the symptoms, the mental health, the environmental health, the financial health, and it seems like we elect people who entertain us, who distract us, or we're drawn to celebrities, and they're like our new gods, I guess, for lack of a better word. But they don't seem to be acting like adults and doing the difficult things. And when times get tough, they seem to, I guess, tell us what we want to hear or not do the difficult things. I'm not sure what you think about all that.
Well, it depends what you mean by the difficult things. When we talk about government policy, government incentives, all those sorts of things, that's one thing. But when you talk about people's individual responsibility, it's exactly that. And, to be coerced or to be forced or something is, I think, something that people want to avoid for the most part, don't you?
Well, when I look at the absenteeism in schools, we talk about it, 69 almost 70% of high school students are chronically absent. That's missing more than 10% of time. 60% of middle school, 7 to 9, grade 7 to 9, 50% of elementary students. I mean, behind them there's caregivers, and all, that number of people. That means that all socioeconomic levels are allowing their kids to stay home from school for whatever reason. And we look at the PISA scores, which is international assessments of 15-year-old students' ability to use reading, math, science to basically perform in tests. You know, for Newfoundland and Labrador, down 1.75 years since 2018. You go back to 2003, we're down 3 years. So basically that means that our students, they don't, A, they're not in school. B, they don't seem to be trying very hard. And they don't seem to care enough. And I'll argue that probably is present throughout our society. It's just manifesting itself at that level. And again, people don't like to be told what to do, but our society functioned pretty good when we had common morals, and there were people who weren't afraid to tell us what to do. And it wasn't always the government. A lot of times it was the elders in the community, or it could even be churches, and however you want to define it. And that seems to be absent now. And when it's every person for themselves, people seem to be lost. Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, is an excellent read. It's pretty short, but basically his analysis of surviving in a concentration camp during Second World War as a Jew was that the people who had purpose, who made sacrifices for others, who found meaning in their lives by helping others or by finding the meaning even in suffering, seem to do better, seem to have a better chance of surviving. And that seems to be lost when it seems to be everybody for themselves, everybody try and make themselves as happy as they possibly can be. It doesn't seem to be working out, because every way you measure happiness that I think would be important, like your physical, your mental health, your environmental health, your financial health, all these things are declining quickly in a province where we're borrowing, more money than we take in personal income tax and corporate income tax combined, just to keep the lights on and keep the payroll going. So, I just think people need to try and think hard and realize that the path we're walking down or running down or sliding down is not going to work out, and it's not working out. And I don't know how we have these difficult conversations in public, and people don't want to be told what to do. But you know what? We force people to wear seatbelts. We force them to wear helmets. We control how heavy the vehicles on the roads are. We control building codes. We actually control an awful lot of things that are really important to everybody's well-being. And I really think that somehow the adults, whoever they are and wherever they are, need to get in a room and figure out cell phones and figure out kids have to be in school. I mean, when we have a PD day, it is incredible. I'm at PD days with events, and it's amazing how few children are there. I mean, they're home doing what they would do on Saturday or Sunday or maybe in the evening, playing video games, whatever they're doing. And their parents are somehow allowing that to happen. And when I went to school, we all went to PD days. So, I just feel like the direction we've gone is poor, and the outcomes are terrible. And I think we just got to all figure this out. And because, again, what we're doing is not working.
Fair enough, Tom. I appreciate the time. Thanks for the call.
Take care, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to speak with the person representing Newfoundland and Labrador's Leukemia and Lymphoma Society in the Visionaries of the Year campaign. Last year was our very own Greg Smith. This year, it's the General Manager of Steel Honda. That's Stephen Pike. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to Stephen Pike. Stephen is not only the General Manager of Steel Honda here in the city of St. John's, he's also representing the province in the 5th Annual Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Canada's Visionaries of the Year campaign. That's a mouthful. Let's go to one. Good morning, Stephen. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. Thank you for having me on the program.
Happy to have you on the program. Congratulations for taking us on.
Thank you so much.
Why doing it?
Well, Patty, leukemia and lymphoma are the first and third most diagnosed childhood cancers. And more than 60% of childhood cancer survivors will experience one or more chronic health conditions in their lifetime. That'll be linked to the fact that they were treated for cancer. So, I have a personal connection with leukemia. My grandfather passed away with leukemia. And, one thing that I really want to try to do is raise some funds to help forward research to help everyone impacted by the disease.
Since this has been in play, I think they've raised almost $3 million for blood cancer research. You've got a personal goal set at what this year?
$100,000, Patty. I'd love to raise $100,000 for the cause.
What's the play to raise that kind of money? Because I'm out there on the charity circuit as well, and as much as there's well-intentioned people, people are kind of struggling. So coming up with that kind of money has been a bit more difficult now than it was possibly in years past. So what's your strategy here?
Well, I couldn't agree more, Patty. We would love to see some business leaders and some corporate sponsors come on board to help support the campaign. Obviously, with any campaign, yourself, every dollar counts, every donation counts. It's all so important. It really started out as a grassroots campaign, but we could get some large corporate sponsors, some business leaders in the community to come on board and maybe do some campaign donation matching or whatever it takes to get to that goal.
Stephen, did I misintroduce you as the province's representative in this Canadian or Canada's Visionary, or are you representing Atlantic Canada? I can't remember which way it goes.
I'm representing Newfoundland and Labrador, and Patty, the way that the program works is as the Visionary for Newfoundland and Labrador, I'm actually competing in fundraising with all the other visionaries in Atlantic Canada. And then on May 30th, when the 10-week campaign ends, I'll be going to Halifax to have a giant get-together with all the other visionaries, and we'll do a charity auction that evening, and then, of course, we'll announce who the winners are, or the winner is for Atlantic Canada.
Stephen, have you met, whether it be virtually or otherwise, any of your fellow visionaries across Atlantic Canada and understand their stories and motivation?
Well, that's something that I'm going to be doing over the next 10 weeks, Patty. I haven't had the pleasure of chatting with them personally. We've exchanged some emails and things like that, talked about different campaign strategies, but I really look forward to chatting with them over the next few weeks. Because
it'll probably be not surprising, but amazing to know that there's very similar backstories that has driven the motivation to be involved at this level, because campaigning for raising funds is not easy. So generally speaking, when people have a personal relationship with the cause, it makes it not only easier to get involved, but easier to tell tell your story, which really drives people's understanding of how big the importance of this money is.
Couldn't agree more, Patty. And, cancer impacts nearly everyone. I'm sure every single person listening today, either themselves or a friend or a family member, has been impacted by cancer. It's such a great cause, and I'm so happy to be nominated for this role.
Bravo for taking it on. So if people want to get involved as businesses or individuals and make a pledge in your name, what do they do?
Well, Patty, I'll left my information with Dave there.
Okay.
One thing they can do that's quite easy is go to steelhonda.com. On the top banner of the website, next to the Steel Honda logo, there's a Leukemia Lymphoma Society Visionaries of the Year logo. If they simply click on that, it'll bring them right to the page. They're able to donate, get in touch with me through there. And, of course, any corporate sponsors or anybody who needs a hand with donating, any help or information that they need, they can reach out to me individually, or they can go to steelhonda.com, click the Visionaries of the Year logo. That'll bring them to my page.
Bravo. And in between now and a final kick towards May the 30th, we welcome you back on for the final push.
I really appreciate that, Patty. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Stay in touch and good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Stephen Pike, not only the GM up at Steel Honda, but the Newfoundland Labrador representative in the 5th Annual Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Canada's Visionaries of the Year campaign. Terrific. Let's go to line number 4. Tony, you're on the air.
Good day, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, thanks. How about you?
Thank you for taking my call. Right now, sir, I was just like the first lady phoned earlier about mental health. She was stressed out. Well, myself and my wife was worse than what she is, because right now, I know you heard me before. Last night I had the police here in my house to take my son out of here because he was coming at me very violently again, which was going over and over and over. And as again, last Saturday was the same way. Saturday past, the striking team was here. Tried to talk to Tony, tried to talk some sense in him, but no, it didn't make no good. And we tried everything to getting into the water, but she's been back and forth the water for 22 years, sir, seeing different doctors. And the last time he hit me and gave me a black eye and broke my arm, goes down to the water with the 3 police officers and takes me in, and the doctor gives him a pill for a headache and sends him out. He's back here now. My son was taken at this house last night, and he just came back to area in my house right now again. The cops letting out again and would not bring him down to the Waterford Hospital. So I was wondering why I cannot get him in to get assist and do something to help him.
So,
who have I got to ask?
What do they say when you're saying, we need help, my son needs to be admitted for some ongoing supervision and hopefully some help or some treatments? So what do they say? Is it unless these threaten him to hurt himself, then we are not going to admit? But what's the conversation sound like?
Did we, sir, I've got to tell you the truth. I don't know, because Tony's doctor, he's been seen off and on for 22 years. The police officer, the first question police officer asks us, what is he diagnosed with? We do not know, because the doctor down there, I won't give her name, but the main doctor down there that's seen Tony will not see us, won't talk to us. We don't know if he's schizophrenic or what mental illness he's going through. We can't tell to the police officers, because we don't know. And last night, I asked them to please, they said we'll take him to a judge, and ask the judge, if the judge says he got to go in and get a mental assessment, then he got to go in. But they won't even drop. They just takes him to a halfway house, and it just lets him out again. And there's nothing done. Where he's profoundly deaf, sir. He cannot speak. He cannot hear verbally like that, only by sign language, if somebody knows sign language. My wife is his spokesperson for him for everything. But I'll give you an example. Go back a month ago, they took him out of here, and they said, the Newfoundland Labradors, we look for a place for him, right? They put in a house with 8 different men on Lamartin Road, and not one of the men or women working there knew sign language, and he was like a fish out of water, and he was right depressed. He tried to kill himself. He grabbed a great big, when the police came here, they took 2 knives out of his pockets. He came out. I'm going to be like that lady in Torbay. If he kills me or his mother, it's not his fault. He don't know when the demons was telling him, sir, to break this, do that, kill me. But when he calms down, when he snaps out of this dilemma, he don't even know he's a loving person. He tells me he loves me, he hugs me, he kisses me, does the same thing as mother. But when he's in this state of mind, God only knows what he's going to do, and we can't get into Waterford to get assisted. And we can't get in the house. It's open. Second part, I tried to talk to the man on the phone. I'd like to get a number for Fred Hutton, because he's just a member of housing right now, Newfoundland Labrador Housing.
He's the minister responsible for housing, you're right.
Yeah, well, we phoned 100 people, 100 people, And every time he takes Tony or does something, they put him in a place for one day, he's out, or they can't find a place for him to towel. And Mr. Fred Hunton, and I'm from Ballallin, Tony Byrne, I don't care, I'm Tony Byrne from Ballallin, and I'm going through this for 22 years. It's too late when I'm killed, and my son is charged for something that if the doctors should be able to help him, they should help him. And if Mr. Fred Hunton helped him get a place that he got to be out on his own, because he was out on his own for a while, but where his mind was telling Tony, and he said to this, sir, he went down to the Waterford and he said, the demons told me to kill my dad. The demons told me to kill my dad, and they gave him a pill for a headache and let him out.
So, Tony,
what kind of doctors have we got, and just let that happen?
Tony, so he's never been diagnosed with anything, not a mental illness, not an intellectual disability, nothing.
We don't know what he's diagnosed with. All he knows is he's profoundly deaf, but the doctors won't tell him if he's schizophrenic or he is mentally ill. He was working for 6 months and then all of a sudden he thinks people are talking about him and he's schizophrenic. I went to court with him 2 weeks ago and his sign language was there and the policeman was there and Tony was there. They said he's schizophrenic. He thinks everybody's talking about it. He jumped up and took off from court, never even seen the judge. And there's nothing done. Absolutely, I don't know what to do anymore.
Now, if he's been given a diagnosis, there would be some sort of course of treatment put in place, whether that be in writing or otherwise, because that would be the only way he could communicate. And you would think, with your wife knowing American Sign Language and being his voice, that she would be automatically included in these meetings so that the information could be understood and then, plot next steps. I can give you a number for Mr. Hutton's office if you like, Tony.
Yes, before you go, sir, yes, you're right. I wish to God, like I told you, for 22 years I've been trying to see this doctor. I only phoned her 3 weeks ago. Will you please tell us what Tony's diagnosed? The police wants. They will not return the phone call. And if we knew what Tony was wrong with, besides being profoundly deaf and mentally ill, we'd be able to explain to the police officers. But if we don't know, and then we can't get in and see the doctors, so what kind of system do we have? Yes, and yes, sir, Mr. Hutton, if I can get a place for Tony, if he had a place of his own in somewhere, and if there was something in Newfoundland, because people are telling me, we're the only province in all of Canada that haven't got an area and impaired location for the deaf people to go have a meeting, have a coffee, have a talk, or get some kind of help. There's all other parts of Canada, even like it would before I go, sir. The last place Tony was in is ran by people from India. Indian, that's kind of food they're cooking anyway. But this man said to me and Ruby, he said, Tony, he said, even where I'm from, we got a gathering place over there for all the deaf people, hearing, hard of hearing, the place to go and have a talk. We got nothing like that in Newfoundland because of one person, and you know who that is.
Have you tried, like the Canadian Association for Hard of Hearing, to see if they have any support programs that might be helpful to you and your son? And, I tried that, and I would also give you Mr. Hutton's phone number for his office if you'd like to take it down.
To answer that question, I've been dealing with Terry Martin for years and years because I sold tickets for him for hearing impaired, and there's no help there for no help. You get monitors and stuff like that, but when it comes to mental health, they got no help.
Okay.
Just give me that number for Mr. Fountain, sir.
Sure.
If I get a house playing.
It's 729 03 34.
How about Mr. O'Regan? He's supposed to be my MP up here at the West End.
I'm not exactly sure where you live, but if you're talking about supportive housing, it's at least a good place to start. So let me know if you have any luck with it, and I wish you and your family well, because this sounds like a terrible situation.
Well, I tell you what now, if they hears of Tony Byrne being killed this week, this night, it's all on the court system, it's all on our government and all on our hospitals. And I feel as I'm going to be killed this night. That's how serious I am. Last night I cried to the cops, please get Tony the help that he needs before, because if he kills me, that's it. Everybody in my family is going to hate him, and I don't want nobody to hate him.
I hope that this is not the outcome here, Tony. So good luck. Let me know if you have any luck with it, okay?
I will phone you back, sir. Thank you very much for taking my call. Thank you very, very much. Because without you, Newfoundland would never hear to talk to or listen to. Thank you very much.
I appreciate your time. Good luck.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, Tony. Time for the news. Jeff's still there in the queue. Appreciate the patience. Talk about Happy Valley Goose Pay and cost of living issues. And Kelly wants to talk about the shortage of neurologists. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Kelly, you're on the air. Line number 3, Kelly, you're on the air.
Well, I'm sorry, Patty.
No problem.
I'm calling today. I have a 23-year-old son who when he was born, the doctors kind of gave up on him because of his diagnosis. And today he is 23, and but he has a cyst on his brain and global delayment, which causes him to have seizures. His seizures, he has anywhere from 15 to 25 a day. The neurologists, we've went to several neurologists, and I feel that all they do is up his pills and down his pills. And I went to his family doctor in Gander last week and tried to ask him if he could get me a new set of eyes for Robert, not someone that's going to look at his chart, not someone's going to up his pills or down his pills. With technology today, I believe that they could help Robert more than what they're doing. He hasn't had an MRI in, I'm going to say, 5 years. He hasn't had an EEG to see what his brain flow is in years. And it's just up the pills and down the pills. And every neurologist I go to is the same thing, and since birth. And when I brought him home from the hospital, he just said, take him home and love him. He's not going to do anything. And he's now 23 years old, and he's doing things that no one ever thought he would do. But his seizures is getting that bad now that we can't control. He falls to the floor. He's, we have to time everything from his, like, if he has a seizure, we have to time it, say, okay, so you get him in the shower. Get him out quick. We got to time everything and try to protect him from falling and them sort of things. And I just want a new set of eyes for Robert. And when I went to the doctor, he said, because there is a doctor here in Central that he sees, I mightn't get one. But I was trying to get one in St. John's or somewhere else. And I think Robert deserves that. And I think, a new set of eyes would change, with technology. And they might be able to move that cyst on his brain. Who knows? They were unwilling to give you a referral for a second opinion? Yeah. Yeah. And is that simply because of the wait time and the shortages in that discipline, or was there any reason offered? Because a second opinion is pretty standard fare. Yeah, well, what he said was, I have a neurologist here in Gander, and I might not, I might not be able to get another one because of the wait list and stuff. But that still is not fair to my child, who is, well, he's an adult, but I call him a child. To my son, who is, seizuring every day, and his quality of life is, limited because of his seizures. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, I mean... And he did see a surgeon years ago to see... First, when he was born, say he might have been 6 months old, and the surgeon said, no, the cyst couldn't be removed. But technology every day is improving, and no one seems to listen to me anymore as a mother. Nobody. And I know my child better than anyone else, and I, want the best for Robert. And I only ask for a second opinion. Like medication up and down, up and down, up and down is just leaving them and some medications they're prescribing, I got to be honest, they're leaving him like a zombie. He has, he's just, all he wants to do is sleep. And that's not fair to him. It doesn't sound fair. So you mentioned there was a surgical consideration, and you were told that it was not a possibility? No, it would leave him paralyzed. Okay. But I mean, that was when he was about 6 months old, 7 months old. And now he's 23. So I'm sure, and I even asked his neurologist when I went there a few months back, could I get an MRI? She says, no need of an MRI. But they haven't had one in a long time. And because Robert has been put asleep, I don't know if that's the issue or not. When he used to get him in the Janeway, he used to get him every couple of years or every year, 6 months, first going off, and he used to put him to sleep. They could still do that now, even though he's an adult. There's no reason to deny him of an MRI. Yeah, I suppose. I don't know enough about it to comment on that, but interesting when you talk about access to a neurologist. I just got a note that I saw out of the corner of my eye. This writer says, there's a woman on the show, talk about neurologists, and I just want to say that I've still not been able to see a neurologist in this province. I have been waiting since I was 17. I'll be 29 next week. I've had 3 EEGs with no one to read them or assess them. That's a bleak commentary. Yeah. it's very sad, and I just feel that my son's condition is being put on the back burner, and they're reading his chart. And I had one neurologist told me that he had temper tantrums. That's what he was having, and I was in denial as a parent. I don't think Well, and then as I was leaving the door, he was writing prescription out for seizure medications.
Yeah, a seizure is not a temper tantrum. A temper tantrum is when the child isn't allowed to have chicken nuggets for the 15th meal in a row.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And the seizures that my son has here now are very scary. He's frothing through his mouth. He's falling on the floor. He's leaving marks on himself that, it's sad, right? And and his medication is not working, not at all. And I'm just to a point that as a mother, I want more for my child than what I'm getting.
And you deserve it. I really don't understand the inability to get a second opinion. I mean, that's a pretty go-to move by patients right across the country. Kelly,
I'd go anywhere.
Yeah, I know you would, and I'd do the same thing as a parent. I'd go to the end of the earth if I could do so. I appreciate the time and the content. Anything else you want to say before I have to say goodbye this morning?
No, I just hope there's someone listening in the government or someone that can help me and get another opinion for my child, because as a parent, it's very frustrating, and for him, it's sad that he has to go through all this when maybe it can be fixed in an easy way, right?
Agreed, and of course, let me know if you make any headway, and I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome,
Kelly.
Day. You too. Bye bye. Dave, will I take the break and come back for Jeff? Yeah, let's do that. We'll take the break on time. Jeff, you are next, I promise, to talk about Happy Valley Goose Pay and the cost of living. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Yeah, I'm going to take Jeff. He's next. Jeff is on too. Jeff, you're on the air.
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing okay, sir. How about you?
Not too bad. Thanks for taking my call. Pat, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
I think you're maybe around my age. I'm not a young man. I'm not an old man either.
I'm in my mid 50s.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
I live now in Goose Bay, and I grew up on the North Coast, and I'm just thinking I'm not sure how to phrase I know the government's saying they're making all kinds of promises about mitigating cost of living expenses and helping people, but I can think of a situation in the mid '90s. A person I know quite well. He made an order from Winnipeg for, and I think it was in 1994, maybe 1995. Ordered a bunch of for his 5 children and his wife and himself, and I think it came to the coats came to maybe about $2,000, and it cost him $5,000 to get it.
So we're talking about the cost of delivering something into Labrador?
Yeah, and that was then. And I mean, gee whiz, I mean, even now, like yesterday, I was I live in Goose Bay now, and I can go to, we have 2 choices at the Co-op and Northmart here, and I went to one of the stores, and I spent $240, and I got enough food to last me for the next couple of weeks, and I got a couple packs of pork chops, fresh, not frozen. Each of them were about $4 or $5 a pack, $6 maybe. And I have an uncle in Makovic that called me. I was talking to him maybe around December, and he was looking at he told me he went down to the store looking and he bought a pack of pretty well freezer or burnt. He referred to them as scrawny, shriveled up pork chops for $28. I mean,
I see the pictures of people taking screen grabs of the prices of whether it be produce or meats or what have you in Labrador. It's off the charts. I mean, there was a couple of programs that were put in place to try to help stem the incredible prices paid in the country's north, whether it be Nutrition North or the airlift subsidy. Neither one of them are working.
I mean, like, I know, like, and I mean, God love anyone that's trying to make, like, improvements, I suppose, or amends. But like, I don't know, maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago, someone, and like you say, I think it was on Facebook or something, a man in northern Quebec, in Nunavik, I think, a picture of a ham he had bought for $256. It's how, I mean, and I hear Siobhan Cody saying, hey, she's adding $41 million for something in last year's budget, and saying, hey, this is helping the cost of living, and like, where and how?
Yeah, it's a vastly different set of circumstances, you know, for me living in St. John's versus you living in Happy Valley Goose Bay. When we talk about cost of living issues, I mean, you mentioned $246 for a ham. Someone sent me a picture of what was a little tiny little pot roast, and I think it was something like $87. And I mean, it was enough just like the size of a baseball.
Yeah.
The terrible stuff.
Well, I mean, I have a cousin in Nain. His son posted on Facebook last fall. Actually, he bought a Red Bull for like $11, and like a quart of milk is like $20.
Yeah, it's outrageous, and it seems pretty patently unfair. I know there's always going to be additional expense for transportation of goods into northern parts of the country, including Labrador, but that doesn't mean that you should be paying 50 times what I am for something at the grocery store here in the city. Anything else you want to say this morning, Jeff, before I try to sneak on another couple of calls?
No, this is just it. I mean, this is just something I feel like people up here. I grew up on the North Coast, and we always just kind of ate it. You know, that's the way I feel. That, like, I don't know if it felt like we deserved it or we just expected it.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't have to be now. You know, like in days of Amazon, even now, like a lot of people here, I know, order from Amazon and stuff, but you can't get that on the coast because they have to pay for
yeah, that's right.
Like I say,
you don't get
the for delivery, right?
Yeah, that's right. Not like how we get treated in different parts of the province as well. Jeff, I appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for the call.
All right, thank you, man.
You're welcome. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye. All right, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 4. Terrence Smith, you're on the air.
Hey, Paddy.
Yes, sir.
Just giving you a call about some darts here now that took place there, I guess, on the St. Patrick's Day weekend.
Sure, what happened? Where was it?
Well, I was out in Gardner, as usual. So I'd like to start off by saying congratulations to all the ladies who qualified for the team. Unfortunately, I haven't got a list of their names, but I have got a list of the men's names. And Clyde Sprackland finished. Darren Mercer, he's a local guy from Upper Island Coast. Roger Reeves is from Spaniards Bay. He qualified. And Ross Kenway. Now, the rest of the guys, I'm not quite familiar with this, so I apologize if I pronounced their names wrong. Nelson Tobin, Frank Dominics, Ryan Mercer, Kenny Bungay, and Matt Power. And the alternates for the team is Jason Canoe, Dewey Lavelle, and Wayne Kelly. So that's the list of the names, Patty, that qualified to go up and play to represent Newfoundland.
So
represent Quebec, I'm not sure.
So is to represent the province at the national championships, or what's the next tournament?
Well, it would be in Quebec. I think it's in probably May. I'm not quite sure of that. But I think it's in May. I think this year it's in somewhere in Quebec. I'm not sure the name of the place. So, yeah, they get to qualify to represent Newfoundland in the Opens and whatever. And in the championships and how's it goes.
Well, good on them. Congratulations. Hopefully they are successful and have a good time, which is a big part of it, having a good time when you go to an event like that.
That's true enough, sir. True enough. But they well represented Newfoundland last year, the team did. And I'm sure they'll do the same again this year. They were well-dressed best team up there, by the way, in my opinion, in the tournament. They had beautiful shirts, compliment the executive on them. And that's about it, Patty. That's all I got to say.
Well,
anyway.
I'm glad you filled us in. Congratulations to all the qualifiers, including all the members of the women's team. And I appreciate your time this morning, Terence. Thanks for letting us know.
Well, Patty, have a good one.
You too, sir. All the best.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Very likely the final word goes to line number 5. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello. Two points. First of all, I want to congratulate you on your statement yesterday about fresh air, the need for clean, fresh air. And I think it's one of the most important, cheapest things we can do for our mental and physical health is getting outside and walking or sitting or just doing anything in the fresh air, of which we have a lot in this province and in St. John's as well. And also the need for mental health and physical health, going for a walk outside, opening windows whenever possible. So I congratulate you for discussing that. The second thing I will briefly talk about is I think there's been a huge mistake in what's been done to the War Memorial area. Many of us were shocked and stunned when we heard it was going to be messed with at all. And it was supposed to be just something minor. Well, it's turned into mammoth, and it's a mess. And at the beginning, before it even started, I asked a local city worker what he thought, and he said it's going to be a mammoth task. And it has been. I don't think people know what they're doing. And it was a shock to all of us who thought it was lovely before it was touched. And people came from all over to visit it, all times of weather, all times of year, and were very respectful, including the skateboarders who spent time there and were fun and were very respectful of everybody who came. In fact, they were often the same age as the young men who had died in the war that it was meant to commemorate. But now it's a big mess, and there are two big cement boxes of for something, but it was very little talked about and very little discussed. And the money, $6.5 million, could have been spent on people alive now, of young men or young women of that age. Anyway, it's caused a lot of trouble for a lot of people who enjoy being there and all of those who live and work nearby. It has been extremely difficult for the businesses along Duckworth, both directions, for quite several blocks each direction during all of this time of problems. And now parking has been changed, which never seemed to be necessary back when you could just use those little orange things for the small amounts of time that it was being used. But now it's a very, very different look and very different atmosphere. And those of us who live and work nearby were shocked that it was even touched and that it has turned out to be the problem that it has been. And the city has also taken its part in getting some underground piping to be done at one end of it. But I think for such an important location and an important reason, it was a big, huge mistake and need not have been done. That's all I wanted to say, but thank you.
I appreciate your time. Thanks for the call.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, good show today, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.